Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this new Saphir webinar. On this occasion, we have the honor of receiving Dr. Francisco Molina from the Comisión Chilena de Energía Nuclear, SECHEN, as a speaker. Francisco is head of Research Center of Nuclear Physics and Neutron Spectroscopy at SECHEN. He did his PhD at the University of Valencia, and he has been working at SECHEN since 2012. And he will tell us today about chasing neutrons throughout Chile. Thank you for your time, Francisco, and please go ahead.
No, thank you very much for inviting me, Juan Carlos. So today I'm going to talk about a new project that we have ahead that is chasing neutrons through Chile. But first of all, I would like to introduce our research center. We are part of the Chilean Nuclear Energy Commission that is located here in Santiago, nearby the mountains. This is a aerial view of our center of Sechen. Here is our research reactor, and here we are located. We are located in the research center for nuclear physics and neutron spectroscopy. We are three researchers here: Marcelo Zambra, Jaime Romero, and I. And a lot of students have been passed in the last years doing their master and PhD thesis. So today webinar, I'm going to talk about neutrons. First of all, a very general overview of neutrons, how our neutrons are detected, and also neutron spectrometers. The spectrometers that we have constructed, designed, and implemented here. The motivation of this new project to chase neutrons along Chile, and the project idea, the objectives, and the plan. So first of all, neutrons are one of the two components of the atomic nucleus. They have no electric charge, and they are responsible of bringing stability of heavier nuclear. As long as the nuclear has more and more nucleons, then the Coulomb interaction is increasing, the Coulomb repulsion between protons. So neutrons are the responsible of bringing the stability of heavier nuclei, as you see here. As long as you have more mass, you have more neutrons, and the nucleus has more neutrons. And if they are unbound from the nucleus, they beta decay into protons within a half-life of 10 minutes, more or less. And they interact with matter only through nuclear reactions. Where we can find neutrons in nature, of course, in the whole stellar life cycle since the birth of a star, through the neutron stars, and also through the stellar nucleosynthesis by two main processes: the S process, the slow capture process, neutron capture process, and the rapid neutron capture process that it happens in supernova, for instance. And also, you can have neutrons in nature through reactions of cosmic rays with um, air nuclei that produce several secondary particles such as protons, pions, GAMs, and also neutrons, of course. Also in human-made sources such as nuclear reactors through fission reactions, or in spallation neutron sources where high-energy protons can perform reactions through a heavy target nuclei and produce protons by evaporation, for instance. And in several other nuclear reactions, you can have also protons, sorry, neutrons. So how it is possible to detect neutrons? And it is related to how neutrons interact with matter. They interact only through nuclear reactions with nuclei by two main processes. One of these processes is scattering process. You have elastic and inelastic scattering, and also absorption. The neutron is absorbed by the nucleus, and after the absorption, it can release several particles. For instance, gamma rays, charged particles such as protons, alphas, deuteriums, or the neutron can be also absorbed by a nucleus and emits another neutrons, two or three more neutrons, and also by fission, induced fission reactions, where the neutron is absorbed by a heavy nuclei, and this heavy nuclei can split into bigger parts, and also neutrons. So then the interaction with matter occurs by this reaction cross section. The reaction cross section is somehow the probability of interaction, the neutron interaction with a nucleus. And of course, it is not a probability. The reaction cross section is measured in terms of surface, but it can give you a relative probability of interaction between, for instance, thermal neutron, which is a neutron which energy has less than zero point 0.1 electron volts, or epithermal neutrons, which energy is between zero point 0.1 electron volts and zero point 0.1 mega electron volts, or fast neutrons region, that is a neutron that has energy less than more than zero point 0.1 mega electron volt and less than 30 mega electron volts, or high energy neutrons, which energy is below sorry, is bigger than 30 mega electron volts. So this is the interaction probability or the cross section for a neutron and a proton for a elastic reaction. For absorption, for instance, with charged particle emission, we have these two cross sections: the helium-3 N reaction, where two charged particles are released. One of these charged particles is proton, and the other one is a triton. This reaction is mainly is higher for thermal neutrons, and also the bottom 10 with the release of alpha particles and lithium-7. Also, it is big for thermal neutrons. It's bigger for thermal neutrons. Another two Another three absorptions reactions are the cadmium 113 that emits a photon, a gamma. It is mainly for, it's bigger for thermal neutrons, and also gadolinium 157 and xenon 135. These three isotopes are quite important for nuclear industry. With cadmium, you can construct, for instance, control rods for absorbing neutrons inside of a neutron reactor. And also with gadolinium, you can also do reactor control rods. And xenon, it is important because xenon is a fission product. And as a fission product of the uranium-235, also can interact with neutrons, absorbing them. So you can control, you must control the power of the reaction by moving the control rods. And the problem is that as while the reactor it is operating, this xenon it is producing and absorbs neutrons. So in a process that is called xenon poisoning. Also, for induced fission, you have the cross section of uranium 237, which is mainly thermal cross section, and also for thorium 232, which cross section is fast for fast neutrons. So you can the uranium 235, it is part of the fuel of thermal nuclear reactors, and thorium-235 is thought as part of fast fuel neutron reactors. So how to detect neutrons? We have scintillator detectors where neutron interact with by scattering with a highly hydrogen material here, and as a product, the proton energy can excite some scintillation molecules, and this light can be detected by a photocathode, and then you can have an electrical signal for this neutron interaction in terms of electrons. here. And the advantage of this kind of scintillator detectors is that the signal width is very fast, of the order of nanoseconds. But these scintillator detectors also are sensitive to gamma rays, so it is needed to do these identifications between neutrons and gamma, and separated, for instance, by pulse shape analysis. Another way to detect neutrons is by neutrons nuclear emulsions, which are consist mainly in gelatin and silver halide. Gelatin contains a significant amount of hydrogen protons that can be used for fast neutron detection. For instance, this trace here. And it is possible to add to these nuclear emulsions boron 10, for instance, in order to be sensitive also to thermal neutrons. The problem with the nuclear emulsions is they need to be processed, developed, and read by a microscope, which is quite time consuming, or by scanning systems that requires also pattern recognition algorithms or CPU, GPU time consuming. So the advantage is the tracks can be seen, the tracks of the recoiled particles can be seen, or either of the production of lithium or alpha particles here. Another way to detect neutrons is by these proportional tabs, proportional counters, which are mainly tabs filled of gas, of this proportional gas. They normally use helium-3 gas or boron-3 fluoride, which both of them are sensitive to thermal neutrons. So a thermal neutron interacts with the helium-3 in here in the gas and produce two charged particles, protons and tritium. These two charged particles can ionize the same gas, helium-3 in this case, and the reaction also gives a positive balance of energy. So the proton and the triton have enough energy. Proton obtains 573 kilo electron volts, and the Triton obtains 191 kilo electron volts, and they deposit this energy in the same gas. So if you put this tube with high voltage, you can obtain a pulse proportional to the energy deposit of these two charged particles here. So this is the three detectors that I mentioned before. Only can help you to count neutrons, but not to take into account the energy of the neutrons. So to do that, one of the most direct ways to measure neutrons energy is by measuring time difference between the neutron emission and the neutron detection in a time of flight spectrometer. The advantage of these time of flight spectrometers it is that it is a simple setup, and also it's a simple analysis. You only need to make time difference between the emission of the neutron and the detection of the neutron. But the disadvantage of the difficulties is the determination of the time of emission of the neutron. And the energy resolution also depends on the distance to the source. I mean, if you want to have better energy resolution, you have to place your detectors farther and farther away from the source. And that means that you will have somehow of saturation of efficiency if your source is not intense enough. Another type of neutron spectrometer is this proton recoil telescope, where a neutron enters to the proton recoil telescope and produces a scattering reaction with a proton within this converter material, which is here. And then it is possible to track the proton through two, in this case, DSSD detectors, silicon detectors, sensitive to position, and then you can have the position of the proton here and here, and then you can detect the complete energy of the proton. So if you do inverse kinematic, you can obtain the energy of the neutron if you know the angle and also the energy of the proton deposit here. Those kind of spectrometers are good for fast neutron energies for between 1 mega electron volt and this almost up to 160 mega electron volts. But the problem is you need a directional source, such as neutron beam or so, and they are not sensitive to thermal or epithermal neutrons energy region. Another exotic way to measure neutron energy is by thin foil activation. For that, you need a high intense energy source such as neutron reactor. And if you place different materials, tin foils in this case, of different ampere materials in a given position of your reactor, and after the activation, you measure the gamma rays, it is possible to obtain the flux by means of obtaining the observable here is the activation saturation activity. That the saturation activity is the activity, a theoretical activity that a piece of material can reach if you put it an infinite time under this big neutron field. The advantage of this type of spectroscopy is that you will have point-like flux measurements of the size of your sample. In this case, are paper hole punch size. Um, the disadvantage is that you require several activations of this material, and normally you cannot perform these activations and in the same at the same time. You have to do it one by one and wait. And also, you require high resolution gamma spectroscopies such as germanium detectors, and also Fondel algorithms in order to obtain the neutron flux. And one of the most common way to obtain neutrons flux of environmental neutrons are the Bohr spheres. Since the 60s are the gold standards to perform this kind of measurements. The advantage of Bohr spheres are they have a wide range from milli-electron volts up to giga-electron volts. They are composed of a thermal neutron detector in the center of the polyethylene sphere. So as you have, if you have more moderating material here, in this case high density polyethylene, you are sensitive to higher and higher energies, as you can see here. The disadvantage is you need a deconvolution algorithm to unfold the neutron flux, and they need knowledge on the response function of all of these spheres. Uh, they have they can be bought by these several companies, for instance, Caen, and they give you the response functions. And in some cases, you can also can access to the convolution algorithms in order to obtain neutron flux. So in 2017, with a Fondesit project, we start the design, simulation, and construction of a Bohr sphere-based neutron spectrometer. It's not a spherical detector; it's a box detector where the moderator material is surrounded a helium-3 detector, which is here. The advantages are the same than the Bohr sphere spectrometer that has a wide range. You can go from milli-electron volts up to giga-electron volts. We are able to measure continuous neutron sources such as reactor beam lines, standard sources, and also pulse neutrons that are produced, for instance, in fusion reactions of deuterium-deuterium, where the neutrons are all coming in a very narrow time of the order of several nanoseconds. And this design is based on the IFIC spectrometer, which has been used in Canfranc underground laboratory, uh, also using this kind of box shapes. Um, our spectrometer right now looks like this. We have played with different materials and also with different shapes. We have box shape, and also cylindrical shapes, but always within with a thermal neutron detector in the middle of the moderator, which is a helium-3 detector. Right now, we have a configuration of 16 detectors, 12 of them of 1-inch helium-3, and 4 of them of 2.5 inch and 20 atmosphere, which is the big ones here. The moderator materials that we use are high density polyethylene, this black and white material here, and also borated polyethylene, high density polyethylene at 5%, which is the green material here, aluminum, cadmium, lead, graphite, etc. Sorry. So to obtain the response functions, we simulate the efficiencies of these detectors, and right now we are able to simulate it in a very with high level of detail. As you can see here, the detector itself has the main connectors and also these bolts that sustain them. Moderator material has been included in the simulation. And right now, our spectrometers goes from milli electron volts up to 1 giga-electron volts. So if you are measuring the same neutron field, the difference between the signals that you obtain from each detector is the counting rate. You expect to have more counting rates for a thermal neutron if you are measuring, for instance, in a nuclear reactor. So the detector that has no moderator will count more than the detector that has, for instance, this LED moderator here. So, but all of the detectors are measuring the same neutron field. In order to obtain the neutron flux distribution, it is needed unfolding algorithms. So the neutron counting rates is the experimental observable. The response functions are obtained by Monte Carlo simulations using Jan4 or MCMP. And the unfolding, and there is some unfolded algorithms in order to invert these response function matrices. This our spectrometer has been used in different neutron fields. For instance, in the neutron beams of our research reactor here at Sichen. This our research reactor is a 5 megawatt pool type research reactor, which fuel is uranium 235, and it has 5 beam lights that is possible to perform experiments in each of them. And we wanted to characterize the line number 1. The problem is that the shielding that this line has at the end, it has a very narrow space in order to place detectors here, as you can see here. So we placed a set of 4 detectors in a 3 set of data. So we move the detectors and include different moderators in order to have a spectrometer of 12 detectors, and we perform measurements at low power. I mean, this reactor operates normally at 5 megawatt. We operate now for this characterization for between 50 watts up to 2 kilowatts, and we measure the neutron count rates for each detector. So this was the thesis of one of our students, Andres Ruiz, and we were able to obtain the neutron distribution for each of the powers, the operation powers that the reactor were was operated. And it, of course, was a thermal distribution. And this is another experiment that we have used our spectrometer for. This is a plasma focus device where fusion reactions of deuterium can be used, can be performed, but in a very narrow time, about 100 nanoseconds. The first experimental campaign was in this place, in this experimental room. As you can see, this field of different materials. The gases here. This is a wooden table. The capacitors has plastic here, and we perform. And we place over three of our detectors in different places where it can be placed. I mean, this is a almost 4 meters length from the neutron source, 3.2 meters and almost 2 meters inside here. In order to take into account the scattering neutrons that which the scattering neutron is a neutron that has been detected by our system, but do not proceed directly from this solid angle here. So we placed shadow cones. Shadow cone is a material, it's a cone section of material that can block neutrons, direct neutrons from the source. So if you place a shadow cone here, you only detect scattering neutrons that are scattered by the materials placed on the room. And we learned that for these room materials, we can have also up to 95% of the neutrons detected became from came from the scattering reaction with a room. But discounting these scattering neutrons, we were able to obtain the neutron yields in around 2 mega-electron volts per each pulse. So in order to overcome this difficulty of scattering neutrons, we went to um, a bigger place where you cannot have a lot of materials there, and we construct this structure of these aluminum profiles, and place our detectors around again the plasma focus device that it was here in the middle of the setup. Um, and for this, respect to the previous experiment, we were using also a digitalizer, a Stuck digitalizer for as our the acquisition system, and it was we who was triggered by our by a current signal of plasma. And you can see here the neutron signals pile up because of all neutrons go together from the plasma source. So this experiment was between January and March of 2020, and after March we have the COVID lockdown. So we place our detectors in our laboratory just to measure background neutrons. We use different configuration of six or and 8 detectors, up to 12 detectors. And meanwhile, we perform also pulse shape analysis, given that we have a digitalizer. We can perform pulse shape analysis and separate neutrons from other kind of charged particles. For instance, we were able to distinguish neutrons, which are these black signals here, from gammas or light particles, which are here, or even micro discharge that can contaminate your spectra from 0 electron volts up to 15 15 kilo electron volts. Mm, so now I'm going to talk about the motivation for chasing neutrons throughout Chile. At the end of 2020, we were able to identify particles, the different signals by pulse shape analysis, and we leave our spectrometer measuring background neutrons for a long period of time. Um, but the end of December and at the middle of February, we found out that our neutron counting rate for some of our detectors were down at the end of January, and then coming up slowly within 1 week. Sorry. This peak here are the research reactor operator that we were sensitive to see it at 100 meters of distance. And this drop here, we were discussing, and one of our students, Franco, says, okay, this could be a Forbes decrease. Forbes decrease it is a solar mass ejection that interacts with magnetic field of Earth and locally reduce the number of cosmic rays that can interact with the atmosphere. So we were very happy at that time. We saw a Forbes decrease, so we wanted to see if anyone else in the world has been shown this Forbes decrease. So as a parenthesis, the worldwide neutron monitoring system, they have been measured cosmic rays through neutron counting rates since the 50s. There are two standard type of these neutron monitors, the IGY 57 and the NM64. They are located in different places in the world, mainly near the poles, and also most of them are the northern hemisphere, and they can take uh, measurements of um, neutrons counting rates, and they can shed light firstly on primary cosmic rays and secondary on solar activity, Earth's magnetic field, and space weather. So we went to this database, the Neutron Monitor database that is available online, and we searched for all of the detectors in between these two dates, and none of these neutron monitors saw over 4 degrees. So it must be something else. What happens that during these 2 days in January of 2021, there was a 31 millimeters of summer rainfall in Santiago. So this decrease on counting rates for our spectrometer was due to this rainfall. And May during this year also happens the same. So the questions to be solved is how does local variables affect neutron counting rates and neutron flux spectrum? And one of the first, so for that we need to characterize the neutron flux in order to know the dependencies of this neutron flux coming from cosmic rays. So the neutron spectra in ground measurements depends on the solar activity. That means how active the solar it is. So if the solar is more active, you have less cosmic rays hitting the atmosphere nucleus. Sorry, of the position on Earth of your detectors by the geomagnetic cutoff rigidity, the number of layers that you have of atmospheric on top of your detector of atmosphere, the neutron energy, and also the soil humidity in this case. As you can see here, these are the analytical functions that predict cosmic neutron spectra in the atmosphere. It's a paper written by Sato and Ita, both of them of the Japan Atomic Energy Agency. This paper was published in 2006. And here they compare the analytical functions with simulations using FITS. And for this simulation is in the same place for the same magnetic rigidity and the same altitude, but with different soil humidity content. You see, for dry ground, the epithermal and fast neutrons in energy region are higher than for pure water, for instance. So the part that is sensitive to the environmental variables, in this case the soil humidity, it is the epithermal part and thermal part. But the high energy part for beyond 30 mega electron volts, which has a maximum in 100 mega electron volt, does not suffer from these local variables. In 2015, the same author, Sato, published a paper where he claims that it is possible to obtain and estimate cosmic ray fluxes nearly anytime and anywhere in the world. He published also a program which is called PARMA and EPAX that is possible to obtain the cosmic ray neutron flux, for instance, in Santiago. Um, and you can also see how it look like if the humidity, the soil humidity is 0%, for instance here, the black one, and with pure water soil, which is the gray one here. And you can also calculate the neutron flux in ALMA. The only difference between these two spectra here is it is the intensity of the neutrons. In ALMA, which is 5,000 meters of altitude, it's 20 times more than in Santiago. Also, this was measured by Bornsphere in a location near to the pole, in Suspitske, it is the name of this place, where the Bornsphere were located inside of this small shed here. And during the measurement time, they have a comparison of 2 different days. One day was a very sunny day, the A here, and the other day was a heavy snow day that it covers completely the detectors. I mean here, and this was reflected in the also in the neutron spectrum. With the snow, you have less intensity on the epithermal fast and thermal energy region, and without snow you have an increasing of the neutron flux here in this region, but for the high energy neutrons this seems do not affect. And also here they perform some simulation using Fluka and MCMP, and they reproduce the same kind of behavior. So how does the local variables affect to the neutron content rates and neutron flux? For instance, soil moisture affects the thermal and epithermal fast neutron region, but not the high energy region, even though it could be other local variables that can affect the spectrum, not only soil water or snow. So the second question is, are neutrons monitor counting rates suffering from these local variables? And for that, we made a Monte Carlo simulation for one of the standards, the NM64. Of course, first comparing with the previous Monte Carlo simulation in 2001 by Pioch, using Fluka and I think Jan 4. Sorry. And with this response function and the calculated values of the neutron flux in Santiago, for instance, we compared the counting rates or the calculated counting rates from 20% of soil moisture. If you compare it with dry soil, the counting rates differ in almost in a 10%, and from 20% of soil moisture, if you compare it with pure water, the counting rates goes down up to 5%. But soil moisture is not the only local variable that can affect neutrons. What about neutron absorbers, for instance, or neutron scatters that can be present in soils such as boron, nitrogen, carbon, or others? Um, Also in an internal communication with Victor Janke, who is the head of the Cosmic Ray Department of the Pulshov Institute of Terrestrial Magnetism, Ionosphere, and Radio Wave Propagation of the Russian Academy of Science, he told us that they were very aware of this problem and they have been addressing it by measuring the snow accumulation on top of these neutron monitors. So are neutron monitors counting rates suffering from local variables? Yes, but currently DARTs point out to the snow accumulation, but not of the whole local variables. It is possible to correct it. We think that it is possible, but neutron fluxes and local variable data is needed in order to be analyzed under different conditions. So that's why we came out with this project of chasing neutrons throughout Chile, because the project idea, it was systematically measure cosmic ray neutrons in different environmental conditions, accounting for how local variables can affect neutron energy spectrum. And the second idea is to design and construct a small spectrometer to correct these counting rates of the standard NM64 due to local variable conditions. For that, we will use our neutron spectrometer here, and also a portable weather station to measure temperature, relative humidity, soil humidity, and wind direction, and precipitation, etc. Temperature, of course. The project objective is to systematically study the local variables such as atmospheric pressure, soil moisture, relative humidity, temperature, and soil composition, and the relation with the neutron flux at ground level between 10 millielectron volts up to 1 gigaelectron volt throughout Chile in different climates, soil types, using our spectrometer in a broad multidisciplinary scientific collaboration. Sorry. Why Chile? Because Chile is a longitudinal country. From the north to the south of Chile, in Arica, the cut-off rigidity has a value of 11.6 gigavolts, and in Punta Arenas it has a value of 4.8 gigaelectron volts. So we have this variation, longitudinal variation of the cut-off rigidity. Also, we have almost all type of climates, Arctic, arid, Mediterranean, etc., and different type of soil. In the north, we have sandy soil and different type of soil around our country. So the plan is to measure it, but in collaboration with different universities and hosting places. For that, we have contacted several researchers along Chile, and they are getting involved in this project. So the plan is to perform experimental campaigns along Chile from north to south since 2022 and up to 2025. Those are the main places that we are going to visit during 2024 in the north, next year in the Atacama and Coquimbo region here, um, in the middle of Chile, in the middle zone during this year and also during the last year of the project. And we will end in Punta Arenas in 2025 and also in Easter Island. We also have a side project that is a systematic characterization of soil along Chile, which is in charge of Dr. Ana Valdez, which is a geologist working here in Sechen. So the idea is to take samples of each place that we visit with our spectrometer and analyze them under the same methodology in order to have a complete characterization of soils along Chile and see how they can affect the neutron behavior, the neutron flux shapes. So what we are now, we are in preparation of our experiments. The first experimental campaign starts tomorrow, and we are going to visit in La Universidad Católica. Um, so we are preparing. We obtain this tent here where we are going to place these detectors. Also, we borrow a van of our institution that we are conditioning in order to transport this very heavy equipment. And I think with this van can join us during the whole trips along these 2 years. Sorry, these 4 years. Also, we added to our spectrometer this heavy spectrometer of lead, which is composed of polyethylene, cadmium inside of the polyethylene, lead and borated polyethylene inside, which has a high sensitivity to high energy neutrons, as you can see here through this Monte Carlo simulation. So as I just said, the first experimental campaign is going to be at the Universidad Católica, the Institute of Physics in the campus San Joaquin, uh, actually in this place here, in the patio of the university. And the local team of the Catholic University is composed by Francisca Garay, Juan Acuña, Roberto Pinto, and Vicente Corbalán. So this is the measurement part of the project, but the other part of the project is the construction of a small monitor in order to take into account the possible difference between the NM64 standard monitors. And for that, we wanted to construct a small monitor sensitive to the thermal neutron region, to the epithermal fast neutron region, to the sensitive in the high energy neutron region. For that, we need also to develop electronics in order to acquire the signals and also to transmit the signals, for instance, to a database. There is a very nice paper published in 2020 where some researchers made neutron monitors based on acquisition system based on Raspberry Pi. For instance, this could be a good start, and for that we talked with Sergey and well, sorry, with Sergey and Renato. Thank you, Sergey. To Renato in order to construct this electronics, and we were collaborating this. So as a final words, we have ahead a complex and challenging project, even though it's sort of simple, it's only measuring neutrons and environmental variables. The systematicity of the measurements required a lot of logistics, and in addition to the technical and scientific work in different areas. We are open, of course, to suggestions to include different local teams and also other locations. Please do not hesitate in openly discuss about it. In that sense, leaving one of our neutron monitors nearby a university with a local team in charge is part of this plan. The only restriction that we have found solely to construct 4 of them. So we will keep in touch with local teams to discuss the experimental campaigns, logistics, the data acquisition and analysis. But for that, you probably will have a lot of neutron flux measurement spam in your email folders during the following years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francisco, for your very nice talk. Is there any question?
I have one. Hi, Francisco.
Hi,
I was wondering about the shape of, because you were mentioning the, first of all, thanks for the talk. I had no idea there were so many different ways to detect neutrons. You first comment on these balls, these bullets or something like that you call them, but then you show your own detectors have this square shape. How does the shape influence your restoration functions? I don't know how you call them.
Yes,
resolution.
Yes. Yes, the unfolding algorithms. So yeah, we started here with Born spheres. They have spherical shape because these Born spheres were thought at the beginning in order to measure ambiental neutrons. So you don't have a source in a given position. You only the neutrons can come in any direction. So that's why they have this spherical shape. So it doesn't matter where the neutron interact with the moderator. In our case, we wanted a spectrometer to be somehow sensitive to the position of the source. In this case, for the plasma focus device, we wanted to measure the neutrons that are coming in this direction. So, and using shadow cones, we can take into account the neutrons that are coming in this solid angle and also the scattered neutrons. So this cannot. It can also be done with the Born spheres, the normal Born sphere. And the second question was how does affect to the response function? Actually, it does, but in order to unfold properly the neutron flux, you need to know the response function. In the case of the Born sphere, the company gives you the response function. In our case, we calculate it. So it doesn't matter which shape that you have for our detectors. The response function has to be calculated for the source. In this case, for the ambiental source, the neutrons, you place your source in the simulation for incoming neutrons in all directions. And if you want to perform, for instance, beam neutron beams spectrometry, your source in the simulation has to have this shape. There are neutrons coming in this direction. So, for instance, the counting rate that measure this detector, it is influenced by by this detector, and also for the graphite in this detector. And so the the response function not only for this detector system is also affected by the rest of the detectors.
So is it a good way to imagine this as the accept that like the response function has this efficiency already incorporated in as a
Yes,
function of
yes,
like
yes.
the acceptance of your detector? Okay.
Yeah, actually the response function, it is an efficiency, but only it takes into account also the surface of your detector. So it is actual the intrinsic. We calculate the intrinsic efficiency of detection, and we multiply it by the area, the complete area of the detector. Yes.
Thanks. Hope you have fun in your trips through Chile.
Francisco,
Thanks.
I don't know if you, sorry.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. No, it's just like, I'm curious. Probably you already mentioned it, but is it Antarctica on the plans for the trip or not?
Sorry.
To do measurements in Antarctica, do you have any plans?
We thought when we were writing the proposition of the project, but at the end it's not that easy because you have to ask for permission to the Instituto Chileno Antártico, and this will be time consuming for the time that we were writing the project proposal. But of course, it isn't the plan to go and measure there. Mainly because there was a neutron monitor there, one of the AJY57, what was in charge of the University of Chile. But some time ago, they cut the electricity of this monitor, and we already have no signals from that monitor.
Wow.
So it will
And
be
do you know which countries have detectors in Antarctica? Because you showed on the map that there were some of them, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there is some detectors located in Antarctica. I think one is from Spain. I think one is British, but you only can see here the location of the detector, but not which country belongs.
Okay.
But it is kind of easy to find it out.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other question?
Hi,
Francisco. Sorry, Paulo, you can go first.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Francisco. The same thing. By the way, nice talk. For me, it's very interesting. This. I am wondering something about the use that can be done for searching of mineral ores, compositions of samples. Particularly, I understand that neutron activation is used, for example, in oil industry, mining, and also this could be maybe the same technology or with some changes, maybe.
Well, neutrons has.
Hi?
Yes. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Sorry, I am just motivating the question. But okay, I'm going to be direct. As I understand, that is the lithium isotope number 6, fissionable nucleus. When it is impacted by a thermalized neutron, it releases alpha particles and also helium-3 and a lot of energy. So it's a very interesting candidate as a fissionable reactors. So the question is technologically feasible in Chile to research lithium ores looking for abundance of this isotope using similar techniques like the you mentioned, for example, using neutron activation.
It's a very long question.
Yes,
It has several things. First of all, neutron has a lot of applications. One of them is neutron activation for identification of certain materials that are in a sample. So you activate with neutrons, and then you look for the gamma rays, and then you identify gamma rays, and you can have the content of some kind of the isotopic content of a sample. This is one of the part. The other part is neutrons has also been used in order to search for oil, but in that case you need a strong fast neutron source and thermal detectors. So you put your neutron source in a hole, and you put your thermal detectors, and then by a scatter you can see where you detect more thermal detectors, and if you have more thermal neutrons, and if you have a higher content rate, you are in the presence of a hydrogen material that could be, for instance, oil. This is the part of um, sorry, for searching some of the application of neutrons. The other question related with lithium 6. Lithium 6, I have to say, it is not a fissionable material. It is a it has a higher cross section for thermal neutrons, and produce two particles in the absorption of the neutrons. One is helium-3, and the other one I don't remember, but you can they are not used for fission as for instance thorium or uranium or plutonium reactor. So the question was about if it is worth for Chile to explore for this lithium material. I think this is a quite old question, has been addressed by the Chilean Nuclear Energy Commission in the 90s. They started to research lithium in order to separate lithium 6 from lithium 7. This project was ended around the beginning of 2000, and now with the extraction of lithium, or the importance that lithium has for the industry, has been again working on it. I don't know if I answered completely your question, Pablo.
Hi. The question was about if it's possible to know how much is present in a sample of this isotope.
How much lithium?
Yes, you can use the your technology for knowing that.
I'm not there to answer your question directly. I don't know. I have to search about the lithium different reaction channels, and then if it is possible, for instance, to do activation. I'm not an expert on that. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, maybe the question was too specific. But okay, as I understand, the lithium 6, when it's impacted by a neutron, release alpha particles and helium-3, and around 4.8 mega electron volt per reaction.
Mhm.
So it's a interesting thing. I know that the last word is not being said yet. We still must to know more about this, but I think it's interesting to go in that direction, as Chile is a producer of this mineral. Let's say. Okay, thank you, Francisco.
Okay, Sergei Kuleshov, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a comment, not question. Where I like this project for many reasons, and first reason is that we are doing very wide research radon concentration in Chile, and combination of those projects could be very interesting. Also, if we will add gamma monitors for these setups, in this case, it will be like a universal environmental radiation environmental laboratory. And it's very interesting, and we're trying to help Francisco. I brought from, you can see here, I brought from CERN 10 charge-sensitive amplifiers from Alice collaboration. Those guys use this stuff for readout of avalanche photodiode. So this one is one of the best in the world amplifier. So our students could begin work, create data acquisition system based on this stuff, and then develop and create something own. And we're buying now 6 small data acquisition systems, which portable data acquisition system. Each one has 4 channels. It based DRS4 chip, which we are going to use for our project in Atlas. So we are trying to combine everything together. And this project is very good for Saphir and our universities.
Oh, thank you. Very good news.
Excellent. Okay, if there are any other question, is there?
Yes, I have another one. So
Please go ahead.
Francisco, you were showing these tips that you have sometimes when you're looking for a cosmic ray by looking for neutrons. Do you also see these tips if you're looking for muons instead of neutrons?
You mean these tips on given by the local variables?
Yeah, I mean that you were thinking that they might be also related with temperature. So my question was if you see the same thing, but in another final state.
I have no idea about the muons. I don't know.
Francisco
Probably,
need muon detectors for this. We will have to produce them.
yes, we can also include it to our acquisition.
We can check
But
it.
yes, yes, I have no a clear answer for that, Sebastian.
Okay, thank you.
I have one small question, Francisco. Can you go to your first slides where you were showing the different detectors methods? I had a question on these shapes, like for example, okay, you can go one above or one below. So why is this shapes like in the middle of your left plots?
Here.
And yes, you also have it in other
Yeah.
plots. So for some of them, they were quite continuous, and then you have these jumps. Can you explain a bit?
Yeah. This, I mean, these are this energy region is the epithermal energy region, and here you have the energy transitions of the nucleus that collides with neutrons. So you have these resonances. If we can zoom up here, you will have these resonance shapes like this, a lot of them. that
Okay.
corresponds to energy transitions in the target nuclei. So
Oh.
that is the reason for this resonance.
I see. I see.
I can also show you some other here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
those-
I also saw them in this plot. Yeah.
and they are placed where the yes.
Thanks.
Okay, I think that there are no more questions. So thank you again, Francisco, for this very interesting talk. And thank you all for attending this talk, and see you at the next Saphir webinar, which is in January 6th. So please schedule it. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Francisco.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.